Good morning, students. In today's class, we are going to start the third chapter, that is the peasants and the Raj. In today's class, we are going to study about the colonial agrarian policies and revenue settlements in British India. As we know, land revenue was the most important source of income of the colonial government. It was therefore necessary to establish an efficient system of estimating and collecting land revenue from the peasants. Various land revenue systems came into practice across the Indian subcontinent. Besides, when large tracts of the countryside came under British rule, certain crops which had greater commercial value came to be favored for cultivation. As a result, indigo and tea in the earlier period and jute and tea in the later period of colonial rule become the main commercial crops as they helped Britain maintain a healthy balance of trade. Usually, these crops were cultivated at the cost of food crops such as rice and wheat. The British adopted fraudulent contracts and oppression to force the peasants to cultivate these crops. Responding to the tyrannical regime or its diktats, many peasant groups rose in revolt against the colonial authorities and those among their compatriots who were responsible for implementing the colonial policies. Colonial agrarian policies. As we have studied in the previous chapter about the dual system of governance, the dual system of governance started by the British in Bengal, which is aimed at increasing the revenue for the company and buy fine cotton and silk cloth at cheap rates with that revenue. The urge to maximize revenue directly led to the infamous Bengal famine of 1770, in which one third of the population of Bengal perished and agriculture was abundant in many parts of the Bengal. So, the EEIC embarked on a systematic approach to land revenue collection with a view to collecting the maximum amount of revenue in a timely and predictable manner. Revenue settlements in British India. The EEIC introduced three main types of land revenue settlements in India. The first one is permanent settlement, second was Royatwari settlement, and third was Mahalwari settlement. Okay. Now, if we talk about permanent settlement, it covered Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, and the Banaras division of UP, which accounting for 19% of the British territories. The Royatwari settlement was covering the Bombay and Madras presidencies, which is accounting for 51% of the company's territories. The Mahalwari settlement accounted for 30% of the company's territories, covering United Provinces, large parts of modern day Uttar Pradesh, central provinces, and Punjab. Now, let us know about the key features and consequences of these three settlements. If we talk about permanent settlement, it was introduced by Lord Cornwallis in 1793. Its features and consequences are the landowners or zamindars emerged as a class of loyal allies to the EEIC. The zamindars got hereditary rights over their land. The farmer became tenants and lost the right to use of pastures, forest lands, irrigation canals, and fishing ponds. The income of the company from land revenue became secure and regular. The farmers were left at the mercy of zamindars, who often extracted exorbitant rates from them. The peasants were forced to pay the revenue even if the crop failed, hence, they were forced to borrow money from the moneylenders at high interest rate. In case of non repayment of loans, the loan was mortgaged and the peasants had to look for an alternate employment and even migrate to cities. In many places, moneylenders replaced the old landlords who took no interest in improving agricultural production. Many of them were absentee landlords who leased out their lands to tenants and lived in cities. Royatwari settlement was introduced by Thomas Munro in 1820. Its features and consequences are the land revenue was not collected by the zamindars but was taken from the ryots or cultivators directly. The cultivators became the landowners and there was no intermediary for collecting the revenue. The revenue was very high and they were collected rigidly. The cultivator had to pay even if his crops were destroyed. The land revenue was revised and increased after every 20 or 30 years. This system benefited the government instead of the cultivators as the company itself became the zamindar. The peasants were overburdened with heavy taxes. They often had to take loan to pay the land revenue. Now, coming to the third settlement, that is Mahalwari settlement, it was introduced by Holt Mackenzie in 1822. Its features and consequences are the unit of revenue settlement was the village or the mahal, and the revenue demand was made collectively on the village. The village headman or The Lambardar was responsible for collecting the revenue and making it over to the government. The Lambardars fixed the revenue on the basis of the type of land, total land under cultivation, and customs and rights of different agricultural groups. The estimated revenue of each plot within a village was added up to calculate the revenue that each village mahal had to pay. The rate of revenue was to be revised periodically and not fixed permanently. That's it for today's class. Thank you.